It's never pleasant to think about what could happen to our horse in terms of injuries or illness, but it is important to consider because when we can be prepared, then we're going to be able to better handle those emergencies when they do happen. Or even if it's not an emergency, we'll be prepared to handle any little mishaps along the way of horse ownership. In today's video, I want to go over what is an essential part of being prepared, and that's having a horse first aid kit. I recommend having one of these first aid kits for yourself. Even if you own a horse and you're boarding him at a barn, and maybe the barn has some of these supplies, but if you can have the essentials of this kit for yourself, you'll know where it's at, you know that you've got good clean supplies, and you'll be able to handle any of those mishaps or emergencies that come up on your own. I'm Callie, you're watching the weekly show here, and let's go ahead and just jump right in with this horse care advice topic and the essentials that are in my horse first aid kit. So we're going to go ahead and get started kind of at the front of the table here. This is probably one of the most essentials to have. This is a thermometer, and why not have a fun hot pink one, because we all know where this is going to be going. It's a rectal thermometer. And I also have then either Vaseline or this is just a lubricating jelly, but pretty important. I will sometimes, frankly, when I'm taking rectal temps, if I don't have anything handy, you can use a little bit of saliva to help lube it up a little bit, but it's easier if you've got some Vaseline or some of the jelly to help with that. The other main essential is some type of a wound care cream. So I have this one. I actually have several different types in my kit, but this is one that I use a lot when not for deep or wounds that I'm worried about a lot of infection, but just something to treat the wound, keeps insects off, and it starts with the antiseptic properties. Another important thing when working with wounds and with depending on the type of ointment or topical medication that you're using is a pair of gloves. So having several sets of gloves in your first aid kit is really important so that you've got those ready and you're not tempted to just think, oh, it doesn't really matter, I'll just put it on with my fingers. If it's something that has a strong chemicals or it says to use gloves, make sure you've got your gloves on. So now we're going to go into some other wound treatment. Two different things here. One is I always like to have an iodine solution. This is often sold under the brand name Betadine, but it's basically a 10% iodine solution. This is really good for flushing wounds, and along with that, I keep one of these dosing syringes always in the first aid kit. So this can be used for giving oral medications, but also this can come in really handy for flushing wounds. So some saline solution with just a little bit of the iodine, just enough that it almost looks like a mild iced tea, and then using this to flush wounds can be a great first response thing, even if it's a pretty major wound that you can do for your horse. When we start getting into bandaging materials, of course I have a pair of just good scissors that stays in the kit and stays accessible. Also, these just non-stick pads, really, really good. Since we're dealing with horses, buy the big square ones. Have some of those on hand. And then also this rolled gauze is really good. So there's a lot of times if it's a wound somewhere where it's needing to be wrapped, like on a leg, putting one of these on, going around with the gauze to help put some cushioning and protection. And then next, doing a wrap like this. So this is a rolled cotton. This is really good to have on hand for legs. And that's where a lot of, in my experience, where I've had the most injuries that I've had to treat, puncture wounds, things like that, often happen around the legs. And then having several rolls of vet wrap. There's many times where you're going to be needing vet wrap. And a set of standing leg wraps. So you always want to have these in a set of two, because anytime that we wrap a horse's legs, we always wrap them in a pair. So if you have an injury that you're bandaging on one front leg, you're always going to wrap the other one as well, because we're, in theory, supporting that leg because the horse is going to be bearing more weight on it. So I've got the set of standing wraps. It's also important to notice that a standing wrap is different than a polo wrap. So polo wraps have a lot more stretch to them. Standing wraps have less stretch, and the reason for that is these standing wraps are designed to be supportive, and also a standing wrap applied well can help to prevent edema happening in the legs. So they've got to function in that way as well. And then I like to keep some things on hand for treating hoof problems, whether it's an abscess, whether it's a puncture in the hoof. Two essential things for bandaging a hoof is diapers. Diapers make the best hoof bandages. And then some duct tape. I often use duct tape for bandaging hooves, and I like to keep Epsom salts on hand as well for soaking abscesses, suspected abscesses, etc. So these are the main things that I keep in my first aid kit. Big bonus points if you know, for one, how to use these things, but also practice it with your horse before you're in that scenario where you have to take care of something. So for example, before your horse is acting sick, or you have a wound that you're checking for infection and the stakes are a little higher, practice. See, can you take their temperature? Are they comfortable with it? Can you counter condition some of these common veterinary care procedures with some food, so that you're doing those procedures, you're rewarding your horse with some food, and you're making sure that your horse is okay with basic things like taking temperature, wrapping legs. You can put just some applesauce or molasses in a syringe and practice giving them oral medication so that they have a more pleasant experience than only just getting their medication with something that tastes nasty, or like with their dewormers. The more that you take the time to prepare your horse, not only will you have a calmer horse in those times where you're having to treat something, you'll be able to stay calmer as well, because it won't be everything new at once. And also your veterinarian will have so much gratitude and also respect for you if they come out to treat something, to take a look at your horse, and you have a well-mannered horse that they're able to work with safely and in a way that lets them to really do the job well. It's your turn now. For those of you that are more experienced, already have your kits prepared, what other things do you include in your first aid kit? And for those of you that are new horse owners, what is one thing that you would love to learn more about? This will help give me ideas for future videos in terms of, is there something, a medical procedure like taking a temperature or giving an oral med, that you would love more help with? Thank you so much for watching this. Make sure that you subscribe so that you never miss any of these weekly videos.